All right. Well, this morning we're going to get started. And what we're going to be talking about is Christians in a rough economy and what you might lose. Christians in a rough economy. What would you say our economy is like right now? Terrible. Terrible? Well, the last time I did a message similar to this was 2008. In 2008, if you remember, there was a lot of collapses of stuff going on. There was a lot of economic hardships. And for us, we had just left Maine. In 2006, we had left Maine. And when we left Maine in 2006, gas was nearly $4 a gallon in Maine. It was only like $2.29 in Missouri, where we ended up going to. But, well, actually $1.99 when we finally moved, wasn't it? When we moved to Missouri, it was $1.99, but Maine was $4 a gallon. And we had gone over to Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia does it by liters. They have the liters. They have the metric system there. And so they have the liters. And we got over there and we go, look at their gas is cheap. We almost $4 a gallon in Maine. We got over there and it was only $2.97 or something like that. And we go, wow, that's great. And then we found out it was a liter. That little liter of, okay, we're going, oh my goodness. So that made it, I forgot what it figures out, close to $7 a gallon. And we said, this is terrible. We went back, and that year when we were in, the last year we were in Maine, we were losing our shirt. Fuel oil prices had jumped. The first year we were there, fuel oil for the parsonage we were staying in only cost us about $500-600. The last year that we were going to be at, it was going to cost us $2,200 for that. And that comes straight out of a salary, and a pastor doesn't get paid a lot anyhow. And so we were losing our shirt basically up there on doing that. But when you're in a rough economy, the thought comes, what are we going to lose? What are we going to lose? In 2008, I had a friend that came to our church, and that man, Bob was his name, Bob lost $30,000 when the stock market dropped that year for his 401k or whatever it was he had, his retirement. And he lost $30,000 in just a short period of time. And, well, you know what? That puts a crimp on you if you're retired. That puts a crimp on you when you don't have that kind of money coming in again. And I never knew this before, but I talked to somebody the other day, and they actually have a thing where when the stock market goes down, they make more money. I don't know how that works. Some of you might know how to do it. I don't have a clue. I would love it when I saw somebody lose something, I could make more. But that doesn't, I don't have enough for that. But today we're going to be talking about what do Christians do in a rough economy. And what I want you to be thinking of, I'm going to try and put it in a different perspective today, because I want you to put it in the perspective of fear. Because what you might lose in an economy is fear. Fear comes into play. Now, I'm not talking about courage, lack of courage. That has nothing to do with this, what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about fear. Fear is agitation and anxiety caused by the presence or the imminence of danger. Anger is fear exposed. We're going to come back to that. But notice the first part. The presence or the imminence of danger. Danger is a perceived idea. It's in your head what you might think is dangerous. For some people, driving through downtown Phoenix is not a danger. They go down, look at the skyscrapers, they're looking at the trains, the electric trains, they're looking at the different things running around. That's not a danger to them. But for somebody else, this is the ghetto, I'm not going through there, I'm not going to, And there's a fear. There's a fear. I couldn't get that across to my mother when I was 12 years old, when she drove into Nashville, Tennessee, and she drove on the one side of town where guys are all standing around and they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, and she just drives right down the middle of them, and all of a sudden they come out and start beating on the car. Right? My mom couldn't get that through her head. I didn't know if she wasn't afraid or if she didn't understand what she should have been afraid of. But she had never seen it before, so this threw her off. I ended up driving out of Nashville because she got a few blocks down the way, and she stopped the car and she just come unglued. I drove at 12 years old out of Nashville, Tennessee this is back in a long time ago. But the presence or the imminence of danger is a perceived idea. It's a perceived idea. What you feel is dangerous. You've been seeing a lot on the news, I know, lately, about the people up in Yellowstone Park. They get their cameras out, and they go up to take a picture of the elk, and then the elk mauls them. They don't have the proper fear. Okay? A buffalo killed somebody here not too long ago. It happens all the time. People get too close to things. They assume things are okay. But Notice the first two words, our first two thoughts are agitation, anxiety. Those are biggest killers around that you can see in society. I mean, not killers of bodies, but killers of thought processes, killers of social interaction, anxiety of what's going to take place. I don't want to go down into this place because if I go into this place, everybody could be weird, you know? And so we get anxious about it. But then let's go further. Let's come down to anger is fear exposed. The fastest way, have you ever, now you guys probably never have, right? You probably never have come across anybody who gets angry, right? It happens in marriages. I counsel for over 40 years of marriage counseling, and one of the biggest things is fear in the marriage. And what they do is the way you can tell a person is afraid, listen to them freak out, get angry, and start going at the top of their lungs or pushing people or something like that. They're afraid, and it causes anger. Anger. So when you see somebody that's angry, somebody cuts you off in traffic, why do you get angry? Because they're a bozo, right? No. The reason why you get angry is they almost hit you. You fear for the unknown that could have happened to you. Something that might have happened to you. The possibility of it. And so you get angry. That's a fear expression. Nothing to do with courage. Notice that? Has nothing to do with courage. It's a fear that overwhelms us. The fear of the unknown. When you have fear of the unknown, which we all do at some time, it can react with anger episodes. Anger episodes. And those anger episodes come out of you. And so what you do is you sort of watch. And when you start seeing somebody getting angry with you, realize you are affecting their perception of danger or perception of lack of control. Lack of control. They don't want to be out of control. So they become fearful, right? You're taking over. You're controlling me. So they become fearful. You've seen it with kids with their parents, right? Kids that come in and they go, no, because all of a sudden they're 18 or 17 or what's the latest now? Single men are still with their parents now, almost on average up to the age of 40. Up to the age of 40, still living at home. And that was always something that was typical within a Jewish society, but not within American society. And it used to be men were at home till 28 to 29. Now it's moved almost up to 40. And so what happens is they freak out because all of a sudden you take the control away. You tell that kid to come in and say, okay, you know what? You're going to have to move out. You're going to have to start abiding by my house rules. Right? You may have done that before. Abide by my house rules. And all of a sudden they get mad and they get angry and they freak out. The reason why, it's loss of control, which they thought they had control. Now, this is important. We're going to be hitting all these scriptures here in a second. But the idea behind it, loss of control. So keep that in mind. So anger is fear exposed. Fear can be loss of control or perceived imminent danger. So if you look at that and you take that concept, like I say, when I used to get into marriage counseling, a lot of times they'd sit them down in front of me, and if she started talking, the woman started talking, the man might get mad and get freaking out, or vice versa. And immediately I knew that one of them was afraid or fearful, the one that broke out. They broke out because they thought they were losing control of the circumstance situation. They thought somebody was going to bring up something, he or she might say something to me would put me on their side. That's one thing the Lord blessed me with. I didn't take sides. What we did is we handled situations. That becomes important as we get further into this because that's what God wants from us. So Philippians 4:6 is probably the verse you immediately thought of when you saw the word anxiety. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication. With thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So what we're talking about here, he said, be careful, be anxious, don't worry. And every time I think of don't worry, it's da 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 da. Don't worry, be happy. Remember that song? And you stop thinking. That's what it comes down to. He says, be anxious for nothing. In other words, don't go, I can't get there. I got to get to this point. Well, remember, anxiousness can prepare you for anger through fear. So when you get anxious about something, okay, I'm just going to sort of use Michelle's house thing, okay, as an example. Can you imagine, now this was a friend that you have, right? So her friend comes up and all of a sudden says, oh, it's yours, it's yours, it's yours. Now, it didn't happen this way. I'm saying this is where anxiousness could be placed. She's all, it's yours, it's yours. Yes, it's mine, it's mine. She's all prepared. She's getting rid of other stuff and doing other things. She's going like crazy. And then her friend comes in. Oh, yeah, I sold that to somebody else. Boom. All of a sudden, loss of control hits, right? The anxious heart, looking for good, can set you up for the letdown, which is exactly Satan's favorite tool with believers. Don't want you to get too anxious. Don't get too anxious. Just do it one step at a time. Building a room, one step at a time. You can't say, let's get in there and get that. Because what happens is something will go wrong if you push too fast, right? You're going to drive someplace. You're going a long distance, right? You can say, oh, I'm going to be so glad. Well, no. Let me take one step at a time. I always tell people that we work with down at Culver's, I always tell them, I said, listen, you're a cash register operator. You deal with one person at a time. The one that's right in front of you. You don't look at the line. You deal with the one in front of you. Get it right, get it perfect. Because if you get that one person's right, it's going to go faster. Because each one is right. But as soon as you get one wrong, the kitchen gets backed up. You get backed up. The manager has to come out and correct your mistake, and the line lasts longer. Okay? The idea behind it is be anxious for nothing. Don't look forward and perceive something you think is going to be the way it's got to be. Why? Because we change every day. Life is daily. And things happen different every day that you're out there. Every day. I don't know, maybe some of you can't. I mean, Lance, he probably never saw himself. He probably looked the same when he was 20 years old as he does now, right?
No, I'm pretty. But anyway.
Yes. What do? We change, don't we? We change. I look in the mirror and I go, who in the heck is that old guy? We change. We don't look the same that we did when we were younger. We are different. Every day is something different. So what happens is we have to be careful about being anxious for things, considering future events. Change is inevitable. And when we start thinking, well, this is going to happen. When I first moved here, I don't know if you remember, it was 2019, Julie and I moved in here, and the park had this policy where if you paid by the year, our rent was only $287 a month. You think that's changed? Yes, it's changed. And it's going to change. You don't get mad. You can't get mad at the park. You can't get mad at the circumstances, the situation. Things are going to change. When we moved in here, I remember several times buying eggs for 99 cents a dozen. And then remember here a while back when they were nearly $5? Yeah. $5 a dozen for eggs? I can't egg anybody's house anymore. It's too expensive, right? So things are changing, and it's happening constantly. Now, if we take this one, be anxious for nothing, we go back to Proverbs 3:5. You go back to Proverbs 3:5. There's two of these verses tie together greatly. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Ooh, do you realize this is probably... The last part of this is the hardest thing for a human being to do. Because what do? We lean on our own understanding. The way I see it is what you hear people say. The way I see it. It's their own understanding of how things are supposed to be. Well, okay. So there's so many examples for that. I'm not even going to get into them. Because you understand that. Your own understanding of something. I will say this. I once had a young lady come to us and say, well, my goodness, you know what? I have a condo. I'm just going to let our condo go back to the bank. Because then we won't owe anything. I see smiles. I see chuckles. Because what happens? Back then, at least, what happened when we went back to the bank sells it for whatever they can get out of it. And the difference between what you owed on it and what they sold it for, you got to pay. That can be a large amount of money. They did the same thing with their car. It took them years to get out of debt, to pay all those things back. Their own understanding. Well, I'll just, that's what we do. But the first part is one we want to sort of focus on. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. That's sort of hard to do unless you get in the habit of doing it. In the habit of doing it. Been married a long time, been married, okay? Married at one time? Yeah. What happens, you get used to your partner doing certain things. And I always tell Julie in the morning, I hear the pitter-patter of little people coming down the hall, and her. And so I know when she starts coming down the hall, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go hug her. Right? I just know it. This is the pattern. Believe me, if I don't see her, if she's really quiet that morning, not saying that she's loud, but that morning she happens to be quiet, really quiet coming out, I'll look over finally, and here she'll be standing in the kitchen going, waiting for me to get up and go hug her. Because that's what I do every day. See, that's the norm. You start trusting the Lord the same way. You get in a pattern of trusting Him. Okay? You trust Him with this one thing. And then with the next thing. And then you finally get to the point where you trust Him with your life. You trust Him with the... Oh, watch your cup there. He's going to move right over there. Yeah. But there you go. You need your feet elevated too? We can go cheer up your arms. Yeah, just put it right on. There you go. You got it. But that would work. So the idea behind it is getting to the point where you trust the Lord in all the things. Now let's go further. Let's go to Luke chapter 12. And I'm going to read these. I'm going to read these verses. So you can follow along if you want to. It's Luke chapter 12, 16 through 22 is what I'm going to read. But this is a parable that Jesus gave. Jesus spoke a parable saying this. The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. Now remember, we have talked about the fact that things change. We get the attitude in our minds and our heart that everything's going to stay the same direction we're going. Man, in James it says, a man may say, today or tomorrow I'm going to go in such a city and buy and sell and get gain. Right? Whereas, he says, you may not know what, or whereas you know not what will be on the morrow, he said, on tomorrow. You're not going to know what's going on. So because you don't know what's going on, here's what Jesus had told this parable. He thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? In other words, he had gotten such good harvest, he had no room to store his crops. So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns, build greater barns, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Sounds like a great plan, doesn't it? But he didn't say this is a plan that I'll try to put into effect. He said this is what I'm going to do. Because you notice, he didn't say I'll build new barns and then tear the old ones down as God allows. He said I'll tear the old ones down and build new ones. What's that plan? That's commitment, isn't it? That's total commitment. But God said to him, I love it, one 4-letter word. God used 4-letter words, you know that? Fool. God said, fool. And he says, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So he who lays up treasure for himself is not rich for God. There's nothing wrong with saving money for the future. But if it means more to you than God does, you're going to have a problem. That's where the problem comes in. You have to stop and you think, what am I anxious about? What am I doing? I mean, I've got people I've talked to, and I still talk to a lot, about their retirement. They're going to be retiring. And they go, well, I've got this 401k. I'm good for the rest of my life. And then I see them a while later, and they go, I just forgot about medical expenses. I filed bankruptcy. Okay? You're not good for the rest of your life. There's things that are going to happen. Life goes on daily. We had a praise several weeks back Randy Barney comes to the Bible study on Thursday night. Randy said what? He goes, we were really worried about the medical bills because his was over $1 million with all of the heart stuff, the heart attacks and things like that. And they got over there and they thought, our insurance isn't going to cover all this. We're going to have to at least pay 20% of all this stuff. That's too much for us, all this kind of stuff. And then God just worked out the plan, his plan. We just prayed, Lord, your will be done. Randy and Kathy, we're ready with that. Your will be done. And what happened is God took care of it and took away everything. God's way. Man's way, they had no right to have any of it gone. God's way, he figures out a way. And that's what we want to look forward to in all the things. This is why you trust in him. Lean on him with all your heart. So what happens to this man? He's going to tear out all these barns. He has a plan. What's the old saying? Come on. God plans? No, we plan. God laughs. If God plans, we need to listen. If God plans, we need to listen. Where do you find his plan? See, that's one of the things that's really neat. His will, his plan is written here. And his plan for us. Now, we're not talking about what you're going to do tomorrow afternoon if you're going to the park, or you're going to listen to a guy with a banjo, or you're going to go down and you're going to go camping, and you're going to take your dogs and have them wrap around all the trees, because I know they probably will. But one's going to go one way, one's going to go the other, right? It always happens. That's not what he's talking about, the plan. The plan is to trust in his way for salvation. Once you trust in his way for salvation, follow his plan. Somebody made a comment to me here not too long ago, and they made a comment. Well, God was working with me through this situation to prepare me for such and such a thing. And I said, oh yeah? Can I ask you why you think God was trying to prepare you when you weren't doing anything God's way? You weren't doing anything God's way. Why were you expecting his blessing? You were going directly against what his word says. Why would you expect him to bless you? And then they exposed the problem that happened. And it's a tremendous problem. Didn't even look like it would have been at the beginning, but it became big at the end. They didn't trust the Lord for his way of doing things. 1 John tells us this, and this is why we need to know his will and we need to know his plan. Okay, look at this. Now, this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, and let me ask you this. How many times does it say you need to ask? Does it say you need to ask 30 times? How many times does it take for God to hear you? Just once. And you know what? He's not like us. He's not getting old. He doesn't forget. And he's not, what we used to do, we call it the Indian giver type thing. Remember, you say something, take it back. He doesn't do that. So he says we have a confidence that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. So how do you know what his will is? You open it. You look. What is his will? His will is that all men come to the knowledge of the salvation of Jesus Christ. So when you know that if you're giving that out, you know you are performing God's will. That's just one of them. There are so many other things that he has. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's part of his will too. If you do that, you are working and operating within his will. So if you ask something according to his will, we're praying for Rob, for Gary, for Jackie, for Richard, for Roxanne. What are we doing? We're praying for them what? Lord, get them. They weren't in church on Sunday. No, that's not what we're doing. We're praying for their betterment. Lord, give Rob an awesome time riding. Let him ride with his brother. Let him have a great trip. Keep him safe. Why? Well, that's what we want for us, right? We don't pray, Lord, let us be in an accident and half of us die. Or there's not one soldier that went overseas that lost his legs said, Lord, let me go over there and lose my legs. Not one. Not one said, let me be blown up. They don't do that. They go over there and let me make an impact. Let me make an impact. That becomes important. And if we know that he hears us, that's the positive attitude we got to have, that confidence. If we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know we have the petitions that we've asked of him. So it works like this. Let me just take this for a second. This is our petition. We've written it down, whatever it is. We've taken it over and we've gone, here, Lord, according to your will, your way, here's what we request. We give it to him, we leave it. You remember what Jesus said to those Pharisees that used to stand at the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall. They stood at the Western Wall. They faced east, and the wall's right there. And they stood there like this, and this is what they would do. I watched a guy for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, doing this. I asked the guys next to him, and he says, well, he prays through his list at least 5 times while he's here. Prays through his list at least 5 times. And I said, well, how many times does it take God to hear? And they all said once. I said, then why ask 5 times? Because that's what we're supposed to do. No, God never said that. God said, just tell me. That's what, you know what's so great about that? Because we're getting older and we tend to forget. We ask once, and if we forgot we already asked, it doesn't matter. He's got it. He's got us covered. And that petition is before him. He's got it right there in front of him, and he knows exactly what you and I have asked for. And so many people say, you got to pray for the desires of your heart. But let me tell you this. You are and you aren't. Here's why. If God's desire for you is here, and your desire is over here, they're not matching. But if you have God's desire for your heart, the two of you are walking right together. When your desire matches his, then you're walking together. You're closer and closer and closer, whether you're in the top of the tree or at the bottom of the tree or chipping one up, right? It's there. Whether you're in a hospital room, whether you're out driving and having a great time out, if you're doing things with your plan along with God's plan, your will along with God's will, you'll know the moment that it happens, you're going, oh Lord, that person up there, I know they look like an accident waiting to happen. Lord, calm their heart or calm their spirit. You're praying within God's will. And you're not going, let me see, are they going to crash yet? Sometimes you feel like it because of what you see, but those things are important. You're right along with God's will and you're praying, and then God affects people's lives. Knowing God's will and understanding it, by the way, how it allows you to see how his plan's working. You ever realize that? If you know his will, you get to see how his plan is working. Have you? Okay, because you're talking construction, right? So you stop and think about it. If you know what the plan is, then when you start seeing the pieces come together, you go, okay, this is how this comes together. One step at a time. Whether you're building, whether you're tearing down a tree, whether you're decorating a garden, you go, here's the plan. Lady come to our church and we were in Dove Creek, Colorado, and Julie was her name. Not this Julie, another Julie. And Julie come up there and said, can I take this front garden and do something with it? And we said, sure, go for it. So she did. And you know, I looked at that garden and it was just dirt. I didn't see a thing. Till the next Easter. The next Easter, on Easter Sunday, what do they call them? Tulips. Mm-hmm. All bloomed on Easter Sunday morning in the shape of a cross. Wow. Nice. Perfectly. Different color. The cross was different color than the rest. I'm going, how'd she do that? But see, she had a plan. If I don't know the plan, I won't see it till it's finally revealed. But if I know the plan, I can look with anticipation for it. Not anxiety, but anticipation for it to happen. That's what we do with God. When we know and understand his plan, we can look with anticipation of what he's going to do. Because we know he doesn't fail. We know he doesn't let anything go untouched by him. Good, bad, and ugly, he takes care of it all. So, many times, we think we know his will. We forget to see how many times he saves us from trouble, too. I think that's really important. How many times, we counted one Thursday night. I think you might have been here, Steve. We were talking about how many times we should have died when we were younger by stupid things that we've done. And how many times he saved us. And we were talking about one particular man who just came to Jesus about a year ago and became a believer about a year ago. How many times that man should have been dead and shouldn't even be here. But God kept him around for that one day. And will keep him around for the rest of his plan as well. So that's important. And then, of course, you guys finish this statement. If God is for us, Who can stand against us? If God is for us, who can stand against us? So what we do, that's that confidence that we need to have. Go to the next one there. This is what I have. I want you to have a wonderful week. Now, and this is very important. This is very important. We say it all the time. Have a wonderful week. But I want you to have a wonderful week thinking about God being in control rather than you being in control. Think about this wonderful week that you're going to have where God's plan is being fulfilled and you're a part of it rather than you're watching it. Where you can anticipate an outcome by your involvement. So have that wonderful week. And then I put underneath there two little words there. Be ready. Be ready. Because remember, as you understand His plan and you understand His will, you're going to start seeing God's hand in things. You see the hand that's stuck in it, the God thing that took place. The God thing that takes place. Sometimes it might come in the form of, I care about my neighbor. I want to help. Those are God things. Those are God things. It doesn't say, it never says anywhere that you have to like them. Anybody. But it does say love them. Right? It does say love them. And that's, believe me, I count on that. Because I don't know how many people don't like me, but I do know how many people love me. And that makes a big difference in life as you go through things. Let's close in prayer. Father, today, I just thank you so much for the opportunity we have to be here. And I thank you for your word and its truth. Father, this is something that it goes through our minds and hearts so much today. What are we going to lose? What's going on with our society? What's going on along with our economy? Lord, you're in control. Let us see you. Father, we know that for most of the park, I think, maybe all the park, we got the notice of a rent raise. But so often we forget that there's also a Social Security raise that goes along with that the first year that we're going to get. That should cover that plus more. And so, Father, we just need to look at your plan. We just need to allow you to work in our lives and not be anxious about all these things, not worry about them, not be fearful of them. Father, your will and way in our lives this day, let us have a wonderful week in your plan, in your will. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.